What is up, guys? My name is Matt, working for Cinematography Database, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Now, if you're listening to this podcast in the car on iTunes or Stitcher, not that much is going to be different, but if you're watching it on YouTube and you're like, what is this hour-and-a-half long episode? This is the Modern Cinematographer podcast. We're bringing it onto YouTube, but it's going to remain on iTunes and Stitcher and all those other syndication podcast platforms as well. And today's guest is none other than Ryan Connolly, the showrunner and creator of the YouTube channel Film Riot. And Ryan he's played a big role in my life in the last couple years, specifically, as I've transitioned from being a traditional DP, working in commercials, to being someone that runs a company, which is Cine Designer, and now runs what is essentially a media channel, which is Cinematography Database. They are sort of separate entities at this point. Andrew Kramer, and a couple other business people who both have podcasts and YouTube channels, they have really helped me remotely to figure out what it is that I want to do with my new career and this company. So I'm really grateful to have been able to actually interview Ryan, and then since this interview we've been able to speak on Twitter, through DMs, and in email, and he's been nothing but kind and generous with his information and experience in running this type of company and kind of media venture. So I'm really excited. It's an honor and a pleasure to actually get to speak with Ryan in a public way like this and put this information out there. So for those of you that are interested in YouTube or diving a little bit deeper and into the behind the scenes of Ryan Connolly's beginnings and Film Riot, the YouTube channel, then this podcast is going to be a lot of fun for you. It's a long one, but I think we get into some pretty important things actually in beyond YouTube, just about filmmaking in general. So I hope you enjoy this podcast, and if you're on YouTube, welcome to Modern Cinematographer. This podcast, Modern Cinematographer, and the media channel Cinematography Database, our main sponsor, and the way that this is all possible financially, time-wise, is because of Cine Designer, which will eventually be its own company. In many ways it already is, but for those of you that don't know, Cine Designer is the industry standard for visualizing and communicating real-world-based cam work and lighting in 3D. It's going to really help you if you want to help visualize and communicate camera work and lighting for yourself, your crew, your client, your boss, the agency, whoever. Right now, this is the best solution for that, in my opinion. I guess I'm a biased source because I created it, but my goal is to be able to create everything that happens on an actual film set in 3D, and you can use that however you like. So that's our main sponsor. That's the reason this podcast, the YouTube channel, all that stuff exists, because of Cine Designer. They're the main reason we can do that. And we're also very excited to be working with more and more companies. And our other main sponsors and partners at this point are Kessler Crane with the second shooter motion control, and Aperture with their Lightstorm light series. I find that both of those product lines are some of the best value out there, so price to quality ratio in the industry. When I was primarily a commercial cinematographer, I always went for the best and the most expensive, but because of the way that media is changing, I think that value is starting to be a lot more important. So the quality to price ratio, and I think both Kessler Crane and Aperture have really hit it very well for that. So we're gonna get right into the podcast. In the interview, I apologize, I know this is a little bit shaky as I transition this into a hybrid YouTube/iTunes distribution for the podcast, so I promise to try to make this a little bit better every time. So thank you so much. Let's get right into it. So Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. It is an honor and a pleasure, and I'm super interested to ask you a ton of questions.
Sweet. Yeah, I'm excited to do it. I've actually listened to your podcast a ton. I really love the one you did with Ryan Booth, the other Ryan.
Oh, very cool. Appreciate that, man. Yeah, Ryan, we got deep. I'm not sure how much. I don't even know if I put the whole thing out there, but I tried to put out the stuff I think that was like relevant to everybody.
You got to put out the director's cut now.
Yeah.
The extended edition.
I never know with podcasts like how long to keep them. I've been trying to keep them to like an hour, but
you should just be like Christopher Nolan, and every podcast you put out is a little longer than the last one until you're putting out like the Lord of the Rings of podcasts. People told me when I started YouTubing to keep it to like 5-minute videos, and when I started dropping 40-minute and then hour long, and then it ended like an hour and 30-minute long YouTube videos, and people were still down. So maybe that's the way. Yeah, man. I mean, that's what I was told too, and I was like, nah. We've put out
almost no 5-minute videos. I mean, in the beginning, they were like around 15 minutes long, and then we decided to trim them back a little bit because it was just too much content per week. And then we trimmed it back to like between 10 and 12 minutes, and people were mad at us for shortening the episodes. So
That's a good sign. That's good when they're mad about having not enough content. But so we got to rewind it a tiny bit, because just in case there's someone that doesn't know who Ryan Connolly is and doesn't know Film Riot, can you tell me a little bit? And I think this will be interesting anyways. But can you tell me just a little bit about your filmmaking background? Like when did filmmaking kind of like become a thing for you?
I always say 8 because that's where I could definitely like track back to the spark really hitting, like me understanding that, hey, this is a thing. I want to tell stories visually like this. But like telling stories in that way, I've done as long as I can remember. But around 8, my parents brought home a video camera, and I always talk about it because it was such an oddly defining moment for me of looking through the viewfinder and it just clicking at 8 years old. That's like, I can make this an eye that everybody has to peer through, and I can make, them look at the world the way I look at the world and see the joke the way I saw in my head when I was trying to tell it. And then I just started making my own short films. I'm pretty sure we all did. And then I went to film school real late. I was like, I think I was 20. It took me a long time to because I had to do everything pretty much on my own. It took me a long time to figure out how to financially make it happen. Whereas now we're in a landscape where it's like, do you need film school? I don't know. And it's great for networking and everything. Everybody has their own opinion on it. But at the time, there was just no information. It was like you went to film school or you just didn't know what you were doing, unless you had good networking already and could plug in and just start doing the thing, which I did not. I was in Florida, knew no one. I didn't even know anybody who had an interest in filmmaking until I went to film school. So then I did that, and then I went to work like just 3 jobs. I was an electrician. I worked at stocking shelves. I worked at a tech company doing call center type stuff. I detailed cars. It's just anything I could to raise money to buy gear, and then just started doing stuff for free to build a reel, and then just got fed up and one day sent my resume. I think it was 200 companies, and literally one company got back to me, which was Alienware. Then I ended up running their video studio. I did that for about 3 years, and that was great because it was basically just this office warehouse, and they let me build the warehouse out to my specifications. So I had this huge cyc wall. It was soundproofed, and I had all this gear, and I was able to select the gear that I wanted. And I had to do a lot of work for them. It was a lot, but I was also allowed to just play and practice in there as much as I wanted to. So that was really great.
That's really cool. I forgot that was in your background, right? So Alienware, I remember back in the day, and maybe they're still cool. I just stopped paying attention to PCs after Apple came out, but I remember Alienware was that was the shit back then. So what kind of stuff were you were doing video for them? Where was that video living? Was that pre-YouTube, or is this going to YouTube?
Some of it, towards the end, some of it, I made a push for YouTube, and we started putting stuff on YouTube because I really dug, once YouTube came out, I just loved just the general concept of it, to where it's like your audience is direct, you're right there, and you're getting a beat on what they think immediately. Whereas everything else is, I put a video up on my website. Are they watching it? Are they watching it all the way through? Do they like it? But most of it lived on the website. I did a lot of internal stuff. I did a lot of little vignettes. They gave a bunch of computers to this school in New Orleans after Katrina, and I went down there and I did this little mini doc about that, which was about the story of what happened to this school and these kids, and then how Alienware is helping them do XYZ. So I was able to do some interesting stuff like that, where I could find a heart to the story. Even though it's a promo for a tech company, I could find some kind of heart and tell a little bit of a story in there. But for the most part, there was a lot of talking head stuff, a lot of product stuff. But that stuff was fun technically because I could have set up a camera on a tripod and said, okay, go talk. But instead of doing that, I had one on a dolly, and I was the entire video studio, which is how I got the job, because I could do everything from pre to post production. I was even composing the music for all their stuff.
Oh wow.
So it would be like a panel of 4 people that come in, and I have to shoot this talking head bit, and it's 3 cameras, and me. Like I'm literally the only person behind the camera. So I would always just take my shoes off so you couldn't hear me walking around. And I would have one camera like on like it wasn't a slider because I don't think those were a thing yet, but it was like one of those spider dolly type situations. I had one on that, one on a tripod, and then one on like say a jib that was locked. And I would just run back and forth, moving the camera a little bit, going over doing a quick little jib so I could cut all these together later. And it looks like I had a 3-man crew. So it was always like trying to figure out ways to make things more interesting or light it different to make it more interesting or doing product shots in a different way. And that just really helped me technically think about, what I could do with the camera that's just a little bit different than the norm. And then, when I wasn't doing those sorts of things, there were like times where, it was super crunch and I was at the office 16 hours a day. But then there were times where there wasn't a lot to do and I could just play with the giant green screen wall that I had. And a couple of people at Alienware were down to like acting stuff. So we made this like little series that was almost like The Office, and then Alienware dug it and they wanted us to keep doing it. So I was able to do stuff like that. So it was just a really good learning experience. And then I actually started Film Riot at the same time as working at Alienware. So there was a good portion where I was working full time at Alienware and I started Film Riot. So that was a full time job because in the beginning it was pretty much just me. I was doing everything. Like now I have a team helping me out, but at the time it was like I was doing it all and just starting Film Riot, trying to figure out what that format is, how to make it better each week, how to keep it fresh. And then we were doing a sketch every single week without fail at the time. So it was like juggling those two things were insane. So it was pretty much every week I would go at least 2 days without sleeping. And then, once a month it would be like 3 days without sleeping. And at the time it was no big deal to me. Now that I'm older, I'm like, God, no. But that was kind of the start of it. And it took about a year of doing that. It was a solid year of foregoing sleep. And then I was finally able to, get Film Riot stable enough to where I could leave Alienware and go full-time Triune.
That's very cool. And I like, I've heard similar stories actually with people that go and work for, these days people go and work for YouTubers and YouTube channels. I hear that a lot actually in LA lately now, but I think it's really
churches.
Cool.
I've heard a lot about like just churches, like churches having these huge video departments. I think Solomon Litham did that, and a few other people. I can't really remember, but so many people that I've talked to is like, oh yeah, I ran that. I'm like, how are you guys getting budgets?
Well, that's the thing though. I think that like, Alienware probably had more money than a lot of video departments, maybe not. But what I like about it and what I see about you working there is that it's actually nice in the beginning, I think, to kind of limit the variables. Like you're in the same studio, you're using the same equipment, and because of that, you start to forget about the gear so much and like the location variables, and you start to really understand like, well, how do I actually make the film? How do I light with the lights I have? And I think it's nice in the beginning to work at the same studio over and over again, because then you can iterate, versus like if you're on a different location every day, you might not ever like start to develop the actual skills. You're just battling the elements. Like you never actually get to sit down and worry about the craft, because when I watch your show, specifically as I'm trying to like make my own content, it's like I've been a DP only. So like I don't direct, I don't know sound, I barely know how to edit and color correct, and I can't compose music. But it's I as you were describing your situation at Alien, I'm picturing you like in a chair with like strings on your fingers, like puppeting the whole set or something like that. I think that's really valuable, and I think that's really like a really cool way for people to start, is to have like this kind of whole view of the whole picture, and it sounded like you got that there.
Totally. And it was like, there was not that much stress to it because of, like you said, like at first, it's all new gear, these lights. But then after I made like 5-10 different things with the exact same lights, it gets a little boring. It's like, okay, well, what can I do differently with these lights that I hadn't thought before? It was a lot of that, to where it was a very comfortable environment, to where it's like everything was normal. So it's like, okay, so how do I take these things that are the norm, and obviously I would use them this way, how do I not use them? How do I break all the rules of how you would usually use this and do it totally different? So that was a big part of. So yeah, that's a really good point that I've never really thought about that much. But that's usually advice that I give people, is just make stuff over and over and over again, learn every aspect of it, and don't be too precious up front. Just make something great, you're done, move on, make another thing. Great, move on, make another thing. Don't sit there and try to perfect it. I think that kind of goes hand in hand a little bit.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's more true. I mean, you've been on YouTube for so long, but I've only kind of like really embraced. I feel like the YouTube movement. I guess it's been here for a while, but the fact that people just put up content constantly, because like when I think if you come out of film school, it's like, oh, you make like a short film a year, and then you send it to festival, and then no one sees it, and you spend like your mindset is like, oh, I can only make a short film like every year, like every like couple months. It's this big thing. It's all this pre-production.
Yeah.
I have to go through all this bullshit. But then you start to watch some of these massively big YouTube channels. It's just like an actor. They're like, yeah, make a short film like every 3 days, and it's on YouTube, and like 10 million people view it. It's like, that is the new way.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know that that's the best way, of course. And when I say make something, don't be precious, move on, I'm not talking about like you're making your stories now. I'm talking about like you just started and you don't know what the hell you're doing. How do I even get started? Well, don't try to make your greatest film off the bat. It's not going to happen. Just start failing quickly so you can learn how not to. You know what I mean? But like I was even doing that before film school, before there was YouTube and anywhere to put anything. It was just making stuff as much as I possibly could. And I think there's a lack of objectivity too, like where people are like, check it out, my film is amazing, and you watch it and you're like, you just started. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like back then I was nothing but insecure. It was like all I would do is look at the Hollywood films and then look at what I was making. It was like, good God, that's horrible. And I remember even in film school, me going to my teachers being like, I don't understand why everything I make doesn't even kind of look like a film. It just looks like garbage. What am I doing wrong? And trying to figure that out. So just again making it, and that was an experience thing. The more you do it, the more your eye gets refined to all those things. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely a quick turnaround to the stuff we do, which I've been trying to get slightly away from and spend a little more time on things. But then, you have Film Riot, which is the quick turnaround sort of thing. But when we do short films, obviously, we spend a little bit more time on them. But a lot of my friends outside of film school, they did what you said. They spent like a year, even like 2 years on making their first feature. And I'm like, man, you're crazy. I'm just going to go and make a bunch of little things until I'm ready to do that. And Film Riot was at a point was like a little frustrating for me because I knew I wasn't putting out what we were capable of because of how quickly we're doing it. There's just no way you could, and with zero money and zero crew. But I knew I was practicing constantly and different things. So what I would do is every sketch that we did, I knew it was going to look like it was amateur. I knew it was going to look like no money and shot in a backyard. But I would pick something that interested me, and then I would sort of attack that, and I would try that and be like, well, what if I broke this rule a little bit here? Would that work? Or what if I switched pacing a little bit than what I usually do here? Would that work? What if I didn't show this ever? I just used sound, and I only showed this certain thing this one time. Would that register for the audience, and then would it apply a better experience to the overall piece? And that was sort of how I looked at Film Riot, as like another film school for me, to whereas each piece as on its own wasn't really anything great. They were fun, they were funny, they were entertaining, but really I was just finding things within each of those to start refining and practicing, to whereas basically what I always say is like Film Riot was like learning to play the electric guitar by starting on the acoustic first. And then by the time, I got a crew, I was like, this is so much easier.
Yeah.
I definitely think there's a lot to be said about just failing a lot.
Oh, definitely. I'm still like, even though I get hired on semi decent sized jobs, it's still a constant failure process, and you just try to you kind of just try to hire a better and better crew. But you know what this made me think of for a second? It's a little bit off topic. Is that like, I think when we were beginning, I feel like you might have been a little bit before me. But like essentially if you weren't shooting film like 35 millimeter. Back then, we didn't have red cameras. We didn't have A7Ss. We didn't have any of that stuff. It's like,
totally, your
stuff looked terrible, so you knew you were bad, right? It was like you knew you had like a lot of work to do. But these days, because I get contacted by like countless numbers of cinematographers every day at this point, and I watch their stuff sometimes, and it's it's like naturally lit, good looking stuff, but yet they still know as much as we did when we were beginning. But the difference is like their stuff looks so good. It's like you almost can like convince yourself early on that you're good, that you're like, that what's happening. Of course, but it's, you're not lighting, it's not like filmmaking, but I think there was something humbling about our beginnings when like your footage just looked bad because it's like, yeah, we're shooting with like an like a HD, not H, what is it even called? DV. We're shooting like DV or like high 8. And it's like, this just doesn't look good. I know VHS, I need to keep working.
Man, I just started on VHS.
Ouch. Yeah.
Editing from like VCR to VCR. It was horrible. Yeah, totally, man. Like, I agree. Like, you can't count on the visuals. The visuals are so horrible that you have to count on content and nuance. And I think that's something that's definitely like washed over. And it's like, I've gone back and forth with Film Riot on, Film Riot, we just teach a lot of broader techniques, but it's like, how do you teach the nuance of the things in the middle of everything that really let something shine? And I think that's when you really see someone who's experienced and you're like, wow, this guy has a lot of talent, is when it does have those nuanced things in there, that does understand how to give an audience a certain experience, how to lock them into exactly what they're trying to convey. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of these, because like you said, yeah, it looks pretty, because you got a nice camera, there's a lot of tutorials out there on put the sun behind your subject, make sure it's exposed well, and it'll look nice, but it doesn't make sense where the camera's put. And then the next shot that we jump to, well, what did that have to do with that shot? What are you trying to say exactly? There a lot of that is like, I think, brushed under the rug.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's kind of intangible. It's like trying to teach someone like about playing in a band like over YouTube. It's like you can teach like mechanics, but it's like playing an instrument with like an actual band. It's like it's a little bit different. I think filmmaking is a similar concept. It's like we have a lot of people with like whatever camera you have by yourself filming, but filmmaking is kind of about, in my opinion, it's like so much more is about like the communication than it is the technical, because the technical after a while just fades away. It doesn't even matter what the camera and the lights are. It's like, well, how do I make this group of this circus here put out something good, so it's like you can practice alone, but in the end you have to get out and do it like in a team. So actually that's the best transition I think I've ever done. So I want to talk about your team now at Film
Nailed it.
That was it's just Emmy. Can you get Emmys for? Probably not. You probably can't get Emmys for podcasts, but maybe they.
I'll send you one. I'm sure you can get it on Amazon.
Well, I'll take that. I'm getting the Film Riot podcast Emmy. But so you started solo. And you're like part-time at Alien where we're doing it. And that's cool. I like that a lot. So let's fast forward to now, because I remember watching your new office tour video and was like super jealous. Because I'm like, what? I want to get an office and studio so bad for my channel. But so like, what is your team like now? Or maybe just take us through like the journey of like the growth of the channel. Because I mean, it's you're almost at 1 million subs. And you have a facility, and you have your team that I think everybody knows. Can you talk to me about like what the scaling was of that, like looked like for that?
Yeah, and I mean, in the beginning, it wasn't like completely solo. Like I always had my brother in it, and I always had friends helping me out because they thought it was fun. And back in the day, like the first, I think, 11 episodes, I had my now brother-in-law, Tim Allen, who was helping out, and he helped with all the graphic packages and helped me with some VFX as well. So I definitely had help in the beginning, but it kind of was a one-man band for the most part because no one else knew anything about filmmaking at the time. So it was, from pre to post, it was, at least 80 to 90% me, which made it pretty crazy. But I always had help. It wasn't like completely alone. But then, it slowly but surely developed. And, like my younger brother, Josh, I had him in an episode and I was like, that was interesting because because I had worked with, a handful of actors at the time. Some quote unquote professional actors, and the way he was taking direction and the instinct behind, what he would find in the scene. I mean, he wasn't good yet, of course, but there was like this raw, untouched, like, that's kind of interesting how well that's clicking for him. So I immediately was like, okay, well, you're going to be a thing now. And he was just funny off the bat. So I started mentoring him because there was definitely something there. And my younger sister, Emily, ended up being the same thing where I started mentoring her, and she's editing now. Josh is a producer and an editor for me now. He writes, he directs. I just slowly but surely mentored him and then found more like, oh, wow, yeah, you're totally a content creator. Okay, let's start to nurture that a little bit. But it was kind of just a process of discovery for sure. I mean, I always had like my plan of where I wanted things to go, and we're headed that way. And there was stuff I always wanted to do, like have a store and make assets for filmmakers, and we're doing that now. And I wanted to branch out and make other shows, and we're doing that now. So there was always plans up front. I just didn't really fully know how to get there. It was sort of like, throwing spaghetti at the wall, which noodle sticks? Okay, that one. Great. It was constantly that sort of thing, which I always talk about. It's like something my dad used to say, throw enough stuff at the wall, something will stick. And that's always been my motto. Like, if I'm trying to do something, I'm going to throw out 5 different ways that I could possibly do it, have them all working for me. And whichever one is the one that comes back and okay, great. That's the one we go with. And that's just always been the way that I've done things. And it's kind of like 4 legs on the stool. The stool stands up, 1 leg not so much. So that that. But again, process of discovery. The first year was a lot of like growing pains on how do I keep this going? How do I do this and not burn out? How do I bring in people to help me? Because again, I was in South Florida. There was no film community, and it was really difficult. And then even people that I would meet for like the first, I'd say 2 years, and try to explain what I do. There was a real like sort of the people just look down on YouTube. It was like, oh, you do stuff for YouTube, really? Mm-hmm. Where now it's like, oh, really? It's totally different. But at the time, it was a point of embarrassment to where if people would ask me what I do, I'd be like, oh, I do a filmmaking show. Oh, is it on TV? Oh, no. Anyway, so what are you getting for dinner? I wouldn't want to get into it because people would be like, oh, cool. So you make something out of your mom's basement. Very nice. Like people just didn't get it. Even brands at the time was like people just didn't understand. And I kind of helped sort of adjust how sponsorships were handled. Like they were usually just these stand-up reads. And I was like, that's kind of dumb. And then we went off on our own way. So it was definitely the wild, wild west. And it's still adjusting and sort of everybody's still being like, so how do we, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's getting a little more solid over the past like 2 years probably. But for years, it was brands just didn't understand YouTube or what we were doing. And it was like, well, how about if we try this? How about if we try that? So it was all just discovery. And I think more than anything else, my thought process was just, here's my end goal. I want to make features. I love doing this show, as it turns out. I want to keep doing this show, and I wanted to follow it through my career. And then instead of really obsessing over how many views I got or how many subscribers I had or anything like that, our main focus was just how can we make the next episode 10 times more fun and interesting than the last episode, and how do we engage with the audience we do have, and create a dialogue with them and create this community. Like that was always my like number one thing, and still is. Like how do I communicate with my audience? How do I create like a clubhouse for us all to hang out with? And there's some stuff that we're working on behind the scenes that we're still trying to develop that more and more and more. Like on Twitter, I try to answer everyone. Just keeping that sort of connection. And that's been, I think, what has grown us is just, just try to stay sincere through everything. Try to, never take on a brand and say something about the brand that we didn't believe, even though people will always be like, oh, you're being paid to say this. It's like, even when we do have a sponsor that's gear, it's because I would literally say word for word what I'm saying with or without money, because I believe in the person. That's why I call them partnerships, because they're companies that I really believe in. And that's kind of been the mantra to push it all forward. And then, I think it took about 3 years, and then I was able to finally start hiring people on, actually hiring them on. Mm-hmm. My younger brother was like one of the first ones. And then it was just like a small ragtag team of people making next to no money, trying to figure out how to make this thing work.
Yeah.
And then it finally had to make the move to Texas because the taxes in Florida was not very nice to small businesses, and also is just pretty expensive to live. And Texas is more central. I can get to LA and New York really easily. Taxes are better, cheaper to live. So we came out here and then just been growing things through the store and just trying to push things bigger and bigger and bigger. And then finally got the studio, which is great because it was what I was doing was I would rent these really big houses. So I'd rent like this 4,500 square foot house, and the downstairs would be my home and the upstairs would be the studio. But I have all these employees. So I have like 5 to 6 people coming to work every single day. And it was okay until my wife got pregnant, and then she got fed up with it real quick. And then once my kid was born, it was like, okay, and we're done here, studio time. So then I just downgraded to a much smaller house, and we finally got the studio, and productivity has gone way up because I found that having a home, like, you know, having that comfortable environment of like, here's the couch with the TV and the kitchen, it was too comfortable. It didn't feel like everybody was going to work. And I definitely didn't feel like I was going to work because I just got up, walked 20 feet, and I was in my office. So moving that out to what we have now, there's a totally different like mindset to it all. So productivity has gone way up. Plus, it's, you know, helping me find a little bit more of a balance because working out of my house, it was just I would get up at like 7, 8, and I would work till like 3 or 4. And then that's what I would do every single day, Monday through Sunday. Whereas now when I'm at the studio, it's like, yeah, I want to go see my wife and kid. So it's easier to stop working earlier.
Was 3 or 4 a.m. or p.m.?
Oh, no, a.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know which one.
Yeah, no, I would say for like a good 5. It's why I say this. I always say this thing where it's like, I think you'll probably agree where, you know, I'm like, you know, if you want to do filmmaking, if you're not passionate enough to where you'd rather live out of your car than not do it, you should probably do it as a hobby and find another line of work. Yeah. Because for probably 5 straight years, my average was 18 to 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that was the norm, legitimately. So it was like it finally got to the point to where it was affecting my health. And I was like, I need to rope this back. But, you know, that's kind of how we scaled it and made it work, was just not much sleep and pretty much doing this thing has been my entire life, basically.
That makes sense.
I don't know if I answered your question or just went on a weird rant.
No, that's perfect. And it echoes perfectly. I interviewed the DP for Linus Tech Tips, which is like a really big tech review channel. And when they went full time, they did the same thing. They just bought or rented like a whole house, and they just shot in it until like the roof fell off, you know, until like it was too, it just wasn't working. And then they got their studio, but it was a very similar story of just like, they would shoot like tech reviews of like computers in like the kitchen, you know, cause like that was the studio. Like, and I think that's like, to me, that's like always, I feel like that's like the American YouTube dream, is that like you like literally started it like in your basement, and for me it's my attic, and it's like, you know, it's like, and then it's like, oh, after, you know, years of proving the business and the following, it's like now we have a facility, you know. So to me, I think that that's like heroic, and I think that it's even like I know not everyone's gonna be able to make it on YouTube, like not like everyone can be like a Spielberg either, but it's like, you know, I think it's like a kind of like, I guess because of you and a lot of the pioneers of it, it's becoming more of a viable option for people that are interested in filmmaking that don't want to dedicate their lives to the Hollywood film system, which is, you know, that whole kind of, you know, running around and being freelance doesn't always work out for everybody lifestyle-wise. So I think it is kind of an interesting alternative. So I'm inspired by that story. I like that a lot. And like a project that you did recently was Bloodtober, and you guys gave away a fucking camera. And I think I made a video about that. And I think I just said, I was like, these guys are giving away a camera. Has that ever happened before? Has anyone ever given away like a 4K camera on a giveaway from a YouTube channel? I think that's like a precedent, right?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I want to make that more normal for us to find, because we're able to have these connections to these companies. Again, all companies that we really dig, and cameras. Like, I didn't give away that camera until I got it in my hands and reviewed it, and I was like, wow, this is actually pretty damn good. Then I was stoked to give it away. It's not like, oh, here's a camera, the only camera we were able to get. It's like, hey, this is like, you can cut this with an Alexa. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I was so stoked about it. But that's what I'm trying to get more of, talking about, like I was talking about before, like, create that community and get back to that community and be an asset to that indie filmmaker. Is like, we want to do that more and more and more to find ways to where it's like we've been lucky enough to get where we are because of the audience and community that we've been able to build. So it's like, how can we, do crazy things to give back to that community? And hopefully, because I remember back in the day just being like, how am I even supposed to get a camera? Like, I want to do stuff. All I have is this VHS-C POS camera that is falling apart. Like the side door is flapping off. You know what I mean? I had to like duct tape it on. It's like, how am I going to keep doing this? So it's like, the idea that, hopefully the person who won it is this person who, wants to be a filmmaker, is trying to figure it out. And then all at once, it's just boom, here's every piece of gear that you need to go tell your story. Now stop thinking about gear and go tell your story. That really excites me. So that's something that we definitely want to do more and more. And it's been something that I've been like building up towards, because we've done a bunch of giveaways, but I didn't want to jump right to a huge giveaway because they're actually pretty complicated and there's a lot of legality to it. So it can be sketchy, which is funny. Like, you're doing this mostly altruistic thing where you're just trying to give something away to someone, like, hey, cool, look. And sure, there's marketing elements to it, but really it doesn't do that much for us to give stuff away. It doesn't. It's nice. You'll get some extra Twitter followers or whatever, but it's not like this, oh, let's do giveaways because it's, increasing our traffic so much. It doesn't. But so you just really want to just be able to give something to your audience. But then there's always two things. One, there's people that are pissed off that they didn't win. So then they'll like accuse you of like rigging it or something. Yeah. And then two, there's like these possible legal issues just because you wanted to like give stuff away to people, because there could be people that are mad again that they didn't win. And, there's a lot of possible scenarios. So it's like I purposefully started small because I learned that through Rev3 because they did a lot of giveaways. And so I purposefully just started small and slowly but surely built up to where I knew we could handle it and wouldn't be a cluster F when we did give away something, do a big giveaway like this, because it's a lot of moving parts. So it's funny when people complain. It's a little disheartening because it's like, man, you don't know how much work it was to do this giveaway for you.
Yeah. But that's kind of like what it's like to be on the internet in general. Like, even the fact you give away, all the not even like the education, even just like the entertainment, which we used to have to pay for. Yeah. People complain about it.
I know, that's the best when people are like, I think I said it to someone recently. My only response to them on the YouTube comments was "Wholly entitled Batman," because it's just like our episode was late because, I mean, people don't see what's going on behind the scenes, but we have, at times we're a production company. So at times there's like insane things happening. I was out of town for 2 straight weeks, and there was, we have the Black Friday sale coming. We just did the giveaway, which is a huge undertaking. We just got out from under this production, and now we're trying to jump back on Film Riot and get it. So we've been late with the episodes recently, and somebody's post was like, just this really angry, like, how dare you have late episodes?
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah,
it's up. You don't pay for it.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. Like, I follow Marquez, like MKBHD, another tech YouTuber, and he's been, we met up in New York, and he's been like doing a lot more like produced segments. Like, he has his own studio and he could bang out a video every day, but kind of like you as well, like, he's not doing short films, but he's doing like more things that take a little bit more prep, a little bit more production time, and more post, so the videos don't come out like daily. And people are like, oh, he's leaving the game, like, you're not putting out videos anymore. It's like, no, he's putting more time into the videos. He still puts out like a ton of videos a month, but there is that reaction. And I will say that I do sympathize, and I feel like I really do understand like most viewers' point of views when it comes to that sort of thing, because like I get used to watching a YouTuber every day. I used to watch gamers, so like Husky Starcraft and Purge. These are all video game YouTubers, and Husky Starcraft just quit cold turkey. I used to watch him every single day, and he just stopped, and he didn't really like tell anybody, and he went on to like go manage a much bigger YouTuber. And then even, I mean, Purge is still doing it, but it's like you get used to it. You really do. It's kind of an odd, it's like these weird relationships you get, and like you do start to like I think it does become like addicting in a way, like hearing their voice, and like they kind of become like a relationship that you have with. So when they don't come back, I think people do legitimately feel like some sort of emotional withdrawal,
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I've had that. I'm fans of stuff and have been. Like Script Notes podcast is like one of my favorite things on the planet. So every Tuesday morning, I have a routine. If I listen to that, I'm getting my breakfast. And they're pretty much on the money, but there's like once or twice where it was late And it was just like, oh, come on, you're throwing off my routine. So yeah, I totally get it. And I welcome any like, man, what's up, guys? Why are you late all the time? Because that also is a reminder of, man, we need to really get a handle on this. But it's when it comes with like this very entitled, angry, that's what, dude? Like, even when people don't like our short films, and it's like, yeah, I didn't like this, thought it looked bad, didn't think it was funny. It's like, all right, fair enough. That stuff doesn't bother me. When it comes in and it's very dismissive and like, this was lazy. It's like, I'm sorry, huh? You weren't the one up for 2 days getting this done. In the end, so it's like, it's stuff like that. It's when people take it to those levels that I'll never understand it. I mean, I'm used to it, obviously, but I'll never understand that fully.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to talk about some of the people that you've collaborated with, over the years, and how those relationships got started. Because we had Ryan Booth on the podcast, and I'm particularly interested, like, how did you first meet Ryan Booth and start working with him? And same with Andrew Kramer, because you guys have been doing stuff together for a while, right?
Yeah, me and Andrew have been friends for a while, and I think the Andrew connection was just because he was already in that space, and I started in that space, kind of. Not, he wasn't YouTube, he was his own thing, but it was After Effects and filmmaking, and we started doing a lot of stuff with After Effects, and from the beginning we were always calling him the godfather of After Effects, and we've been accused of like ripping him off every now and again, but I'm like, you can't rip someone off when you credit them for the idea in the show and call them the godfather of After Effects. That's not ripping them off. That's being like, hey, learn this from Andrew. But yeah, we're promoting his stuff all the time, because obviously his stuff for After Effects is some of the best out there, if not the best out there. So that connection sort of happened organically through that. We had mutual friends, and then I think we just met up. And I think it was like NAB or something, and then just got more connected, and it just slowly grew from there. And now we've been friends for about like 3 years, just wanting to do more stuff with each other. But he was working at Bad Robot and just living there basically. So it's just no time. So Intercept is the thing that he was doing with our channel, but Intercept's really not so much a collaboration. It's really his thing. But so the Bloodtober thing was really the first time we were able to actually fully collaborate, which was cool. Tons of fun. And we're definitely going to do more stuff going forward. Booth was funnier. I'm pretty sure it's I don't remember fully, but I'm pretty sure I was doing this. So I was doing this short film. It was this huge short film. It was going to be. It was called Outsiders. It fell through last minute, but and that's how our other short film Proximity came about. But we were putting that together, and I needed a DP, and I wanted Khalid, and we were pretty close to possibly doing that, but then he had another gig that conflicted, and he couldn't do it. So then I'm trying to find another DP, and I just searched on Vimeo, Cinematographer Texas, and Ryan's reel was on there, and I was like, wow, look at that, this is awesome. And I can't remember if I figured out that I knew someone that knew him and contacted him that way, or if I contacted him through Vimeo. I might have contacted him through Vimeo. I'll have to ask him that. But then we started talking, and then I was like, yeah, man, this guy needs to do this short film with me. And then so he jumped on board, and then we worked together back and forth with that a little bit, and I really liked the way that he thought, and we even met up and went and looked at locations, and just the way that he thought about things made a lot of sense to me, and I dug it. And there was also a lot of not opposition, but there's another side of the coin there, where it wasn't, we weren't thinking about things the exact same way. We thought about things differently, but it was like an opposite attracts sort of situation for me.
It's like a balance.
Right. And I love that. I love that. I don't want people being like, yes, Ryan, that's great. I want them being like, yeah, I get what you're trying to do, but this would be better. I love that. And then that didn't work out. And then we just trying to work with each other for the longest time. And then we finally did UFO. Yeah. And he came out for that. But that was so like guerrilla run and gun. It was borderline me and Booth doing basically everything film wise. We had a bunch of people there to help us out, but it was really me and Booth for the most part, and it was crazy, and everything went wrong. It was one of my most nightmare productions, I think, because just like I think in the BTS we show it's like everything, like there's always the Murphy's Law of anything that could go wrong will, sure, but this was like I started having like a crazy twitch and manic laughter. It was like literally not a single thing went right. And the fact that we were able to put together anything that resembled any kind of a decent short film in the end was a huge point of pride for me, because I really thought when we left, I was like, I don't think I have a short film here. I think I might have to turn this into a trailer or something, because everything outside was like cut in like a third, and I put together a different plan in my head of what we were going to shoot and how we were going to shoot it. I think 5 different times by the time we actually shot the thing. It was great. Anyway, it was great.
I thought, 'cause that was for Canon, wasn't it? Wasn't Canon like involved with that with Gem? Because I thought that looked good. I remember catching a part of that. I think like the interior, I think it was like the beginning scene. I don't remember it exactly, but like the beginning scene with the team. I remember watching that. I think it looked great.
Well, I thought it looks real pretty because, Ryan Booth, everything Ryan Booth does looks pretty, but it was just the actual production of it. Like, some stuff worked out better. Like I did want the cabin to, in the end, feel how it felt. Like the interior cabin stuff was pretty solid to what I wanted, but I cut a lot of it down. There was more like character story development that I wanted to do, and I had to cut it all out because just we were running out of time and everything was falling apart. But in the end, it turned out pretty good, and it looks great because, well, Booth. But Bloodtober was a much better, much more fluid project. And I told Ryan, I'm like, man, next time I'm gonna get you a crew. I'm gonna get you what you need. And I did for Ghost House. So, and I think Ghost House is the best looking short film I've ever done. Like Ryan Booth just absolutely nailed it, I thought.
And you've assembled like such a great team, as any director does, with Ryan Booth shooting it, with Andrew doing the VFX, and like I watched your episode about the person doing the music and the sound effects. I was like, I wrote at the comment on it. I was like, that is so much work, because I'm just a DP. I don't think about any of that stuff. I'm just gonna wait for it to come out. Everyone does their part, but I shot this thing. Like that's all DPs think that way.
Right, yeah.
And I'm watching this guy like make footsteps and like score the music. I was like, oh my god, like that's involved. So you have this like great team, and the project came out amazing, and it's like. But I still, even myself, and I shoot commercials, and I feel like I should know this stuff. I was still kind of overwhelmed watching how many people you got involved with it to make it come out that well. I thought I was impressed with it.
Yeah, thanks, man. And that's something that's been a conscious effort for, the last 5 years of building a team that I want to keep making. Because my idea is, I'm just slowly but surely building this team that I just want to make everything with. And it's, I'll work with somebody and be like, you're a cool dude, but we just don't click, moving on. Or work with somebody and be like, yeah, you definitely don't bring the atmosphere that I'm wanting, and move on. Because especially on, in production, I have my no assholes rule where it's like, if you're douchey in any way, you're not coming back. It's like, I don't care how talented you are. If you're bringing the mood down and you're not helping create a fun atmosphere where everybody's comfortable and can collaborate and be creative safely, that's not going to lead to a good end result, no matter how talented you are. So my thing is always like, everybody, has to, I want it to be a family. And I've been on some sets where just people are treated poorly just because they're a PA. And that's nonsense to me. Like I don't care if you empty a garbage can and that's the only thing you're there to do. You're just as important as the director, because everybody's making the thing happen. So all that stuff is really important to me. And that's been a part of my process of picking these people. So Ryan, he's such a great and kind guy. And every one of the people in my team are like that. And it leads to such a great atmosphere and such a safe place for collaboration that I think, stuff that I wouldn't have felt comfortable letting go of or taking the opinion of, it makes it a lot easier to come up with really cool ideas, I think. And that's, I'm still working on it. I don't have my final team yet, but that's been like sort of my approach at building this team.
I like it, and yeah, watching the shorts from Bloodtober. I mean, the production scale of it and the team and everything. It's like, I'm really interested to see like where that goes with Triune and Film Riot. So, congrats on that project with the giveaway. I mean, me running this channel now, I get like not only producing those films, but the co-marketing you pulled off in it, and just getting all that together is quite a project. So I'm looking forward to the future one. So I wanted to talk with you a little bit. We talked a little bit off channel. I know you can't probably talk about it too much, but I think a lot of people think that like, you're Film Riot only. I mean, I think that's what's front facing. That's what's the loudest. But you have Triune, which is your production company, and you're also kind of working on other projects as well. Can you talk about that stuff like at all?
I can't talk about anything specifically, unfortunately, but that's the bummer about working on stuff you don't own, because everything that I own, I'm extremely transparent. As people know, I don't care if they know that I royally screwed up, like with Outsiders when that fell through. We did a video of me talking about the things I did wrong and taking responsibility for it, because I think all that stuff's really important. Like, man, I wish that existed when I was younger, and somebody telling me, hey, this is probably coming. Two things: don't do this. The other thing, it's probably coming no matter what. Prepare yourself. This is what you do. But when it does happen, you know what I mean? Like, because when it happened, I was like, man, what a failure. And then, I'm talking to a ton of people and they're like, oh, no, that happens to everybody. And I'm like, well, why hasn't anybody talked about this? Yeah. So, we're really transparent with our stuff. But when I work on stuff that I don't own, I have to handle it the way that they want me to handle it. You're in the commercial world. So there is some stuff that I'm working on that I can't talk about, one of which I'll be able to talk about pretty soon. I was in LA for 2 weeks helping out on a thing, and I'm helping in post as well. And that should be announced relatively soon. I didn't direct or anything like that. It's much less of an involvement than you'd think, but lots of fun. And then there's just some other projects that I do, and then lots of pitching. I go out to LA to pitch stuff. I just pitched to a large company a few weeks ago. So there's stuff like that always happening. So it's like, Film Riot is happening in the foreground, but in the background, there's always so many wheels turning. It's like I said before, you throw enough stuff at the wall, something sticks. There's always tons of stuff being thrown at the wall that our audience doesn't know about, because you can't really talk about it, obviously.
Well, that's cool, man. I wanted to share that with everybody. I think that like we said and you said, is that Film Riot is the loud channel, is what people see. But I know we talked about it. You can't announce it yet or anything like that. But there's some cool stuff happening behind the scenes as well. And I wanted people to know that. I think that is a cool facet. It's a similar thing with my platform. People ask me all the time. I still don't know the answer. Like, are you a DP? Do you still shoot things? And I'm like, like kind of. And if I did, like, I'm shooting something in 2 weeks. But for this commercial client, I can never say that I worked there. There's no photos or videos allowed, and they don't give it to me for my reel. I'm still paid extremely well, and I'm DPing, but I could never show it, And I think that
totally they did it, not you.
Yeah, like with social media, it's like, well, where's the set photos? Where's the stuff? It's like, are you still shooting? I'm like, I make a living a different way now. But on top of that, when I do take these jobs, these type of commercials, some of them never go out. Like they're internal or they're business to business, and like you just there's like trade secrets like in the videos. Like you just can't. You just can't show it. Not everything is a front-facing feature film or Coca-Cola, Instagram commercial. Unfortunately, so
totally. I've done a bunch. I've done a bunch of those. One of those paid for my wedding, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the dirty secret about that stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, totally. And that's the ththing. There's always several things happening behind the scenes. So people are like, you're just doing Film Riot. Why is it always behind? It's like, because we're not just doing Film Riot. It's a production company. And, the sad thing is even a lot of the stuff that you're working on behind the scenes, it just doesn't go through. You pitch 10 things, you actually do 1 or 2 of them. So there's a lot of stuff that you just do all this work on, and it just never happens.
Oh, that would be an amazing ratio if that was your ratio, was 1 to 10. That would be like record breaking.
that is about my ratio, because I'm really selective.
Right.
And it's usually not like, hey, you've never heard of me before, here's a pitch. It's usually people are coming to me, or it's like, a connection made in that way. So it's I'm very lucky in that Film Riot definitely helps with all of that stuff. But
because they know your brand already.
Yeah, totally. But it's still like, I pitch a ton. I do very few. So there's always several things being worked on that just nothing ever happens. But I've never met. It's not like, man, what wasted time. It's like I learned from that, and it's like, okay, I pitched all these ideas. They didn't take these ideas, but now I have them, and then this other thing shows up, and it's like, hey, you remember those ideas I had for those? That would actually work perfectly here, and that actually, is the same way that I write. I have so many different ideas that I'm never going to do anything with. I have a ton of outlines that I'm never going to do anything with because, after a while I'm like, yeah, you know what, as a whole, this isn't so great. Or, well, somebody came out and they did this, so this is no longer original. But I have all these ideas that when I'm working on something new, I can just pluck from and be like, oh, this works in here and that works in here and this concept works in here. So, yeah, it's never a wasted bit of time.
Yeah, and I hear when I was talking with Ryan Booth, we talk every once in a while too about some of his projects. I think it's a similar mentality, and I think that is kind of what you have to do as a director. Is like you just have to constantly have ideas and constantly pitching things and constantly putting things out there, and then like every once in a while one of them happens and you actually have to execute it. I feel like if I did a podcast about directors, like, because the DP life is pretty chill, it's pretty awesome. I think like you get most of the jobs that you're like kind of offered. If I did a podcast about what directors' lives are like, I don't think everyone would really want to do it. It's like I pitched like 30 commercials, each pitch takes me like 3 days, and I do like 2 of them a year. Like that's like super common for commercial directors.
Yeah, and even when you go into the more narrative land, and I've started recently pitching to larger companies only recently, and it's very nerve-wracking, like in the room, okay, wow me sort of moment, and then just what are you working on? You're like, so you have to have like this just drawer full of ideas that you could pop out. And then in those moments when you're just talking to them, sort of having your small talk, figuring out what is it that they're looking for genre wise or tonally, and then pulling that, a drawer open and being like, well, I have these, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the director and pitching for narrative is like a world I've never even like been ballsy enough, I think, to enter. So you're like really in the thick of it for that stuff. But that's cool though. I wish you were able to talk about it, but I know that's like you just it's probably not likely until they come out or something, like years after director's commentary or something.
Yeah, I mean, I just started the whole pitching thing, and so I just recently even just picked the brains of friends who've done it a ton and been like, what do I do? What is this gonna be? And it's just really, because I'm actually a very like timid, shy person. Like if we're talking about film and we're just, kicking the shit, whatever, then yeah, sure. But for the most part, if I don't know you, I'm actually pretty like, so that even just the idea of a pitch is just horrifying to me. But you got to do it. So that's been something that's just been more recent for me. So as I dive into it more and get better legs in it, I'd totally be down. Just not talk specifics, but just talk about it. Going forward eventually.
Well, that's cool. I think that'll blow people's fucking minds. It's like, so this is how we pitch to the Hollywood executives. It's like, oh shit. That's
man. Like, yeah, once I do it more, I would even do an episode on it, like Film Riot episode, even do like a mock pitch session or something. It's weird. I think the best advice, I had 2 pieces of advice that were amazing. One was just tell them your idea like you would tell your friend. Just if you're excited about the idea and you're telling a friend, that's exactly how you should pitch it to them. And then the other amazing piece of advice that actually worked for me and calmed me down was, when you walk in, you're not begging them to make your movie. You're telling them the movie that you're going to make with or without them, and they can be involved if they want to. And I was like, that is a great way to look at it, to where my mindset is like, I'm not telling you this in hopes that you make it. I'm telling you what I'm going to make. This is what I'm going to make, and I'm excited about it. And if you want to be involved, great. And that sort of, I don't know why, but that sort of mindset changed everything for me. And it went from like feeling like I was going to throw up nervous to being like, oh, I hope they're nice people. You know what I mean? And then once I got in there and they were cool, it was totally chill. And I just told them the ideas that I'm going to make eventually.
I like that. I like that a lot. To contextualize it for DPs, because I guess this is primarily like a DP podcast. Maybe it's filmmaking in general. I don't know. But, I've learned, because DPs pitch directors, in interviews and phone calls and agent, blah, 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 all that stuff. It happens. You have to start pitching in a way. The way that I've been able to handle those is a similar thing, because I'm kind of naturally introverted as well. But the way that I've dealt with it, and I've heard from other DPs who do it, it's like you just basically always have to be able to walk away from a project. You can't like need the project. You're like, and 'cause
Right.
if you come into it that way, you're trying to like please people, and I mean you always have to keep that in mind. But it's like you want to be able to walk away from it. And I've been luckily by running this company, I'd never have to take a DP job again in my life. But I'm going to. I'm taking them now. But when people approach me for jobs and they come through my agency, it's like I'm like. So tell me about it, and then I'll talk to the producer. I've actually consulted on jobs and then told them I didn't want to do it after, but I told them how to execute it.
Yeah.
I was like, let's just walk through how this would probably go down, because a lot of the stuff I do is like extremely technical and like
I've
it's
never
like a similar idea.
I've never dealt with that. It's been more, I'm always like, here's the DP I want. Hey, will you please come do this? So is that like, so there's a project and there's just a grouping of DPs that are going to come talk to this director for the director to pick the one that he wants to go with. And then you have to go in there and pitch like your vision of the film. Is that how that works?
Well, this isn't even for narrative. Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
I mean, like narrative, it can range, but like this is like for commercial stuff.
Yeah.
There's like a whole kind of like unspoken ranking of DPs. It's just like I can name them. I know the people, but it's like there's the people that are clearly above you that the director wants, right? So it's like so say you land like this like $5 million commercial. You want the $5 million DP.
So much money.
You want the $5 million
Make a
DP.
film with that.
Yeah. Well, we're talking like, a 30, honestly. It's like these happen. And it's like, well, clearly we want the person that's done those a lot, and at that job, there's a ranking within the average like agency. Like everyone knows the deep, like there's basically like 10 DPs that are like eligible for this, like Philippe Lassorde, like Will Rexer, like these type of people, but they're not always available and they're doing movies and that sort of thing. So it's like you eventually the list gets whittled down and you end up in there somewhere. And as a young person, for me, it's like you have to come in and you kind of end up like pitching to the director because they don't really trust you yet. Like they don't know who you are, like that sort of thing, or it's like the producer or the agency or the creative directors. Like we kind of see it on your reel, but like we want to hear you talk about it.
Yeah.
And in those
are they looking for you to like talk technically to them, or is it more like they just want to see the confidence in how you talk about it?
I think it's a little bit of all of it, because a good producer, for instance, like I have the same ear now. It's like I can listen to a DP talk about a treatment, and I can tell if they had done it before. I can tell like if they're going to do a good job. Just talking about it like high level. Like, can you talk to someone who's non-technical about an execution that's extremely technical? Can you do that? Can you convey the confidence? Can you talk about it in the language that they understand? Like, have you been around creative directors long enough that you can talk to them about brand specific things, and then also be keeping an eye on like a good question like to ask DPs, like if you're a producer, is like, well, how long do you think this is going to take? They're not really looking for like an answer on like that you're going to be accountable for. It's like, oh, exactly 30 minutes. Like, so no, like they want to know that you understand the factors that go into this time-wise and what that's going to mean for the aesthetic. So it's like simple thing is like, they're like, it would never be this specific, but it's like, if you start pitching a techno crane for specifics, it's like, well, why is that? And I would, specific projects, it's like, I mean, I don't want to talk about me for this whole thing, but it's like, oh, we have this celebrity for 30 minutes and you guys want to pull off these like amazing shots straight down, get all this coverage. It's like, I'm just telling you now, like having done this, you're going to need a Techno 50 in the back. This is the team. It's going to cost you this money up front, but you're saving it because your talent walks away in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You can save the money by having 2 dollies, but you'll not get the coverage. And then you just spent all your budget on that. So I can communicate that I'm looking out for their end product. I know what their money comes from. I know what that client is looking for, like what the production company is responsible for executing. I'm looking at the time factor, the costs. Like I'm balancing the whole thing like I was the client, except I know about photography. So when I'm in those type of situations, especially as an up-and-comer, still like, 30 in the commercial world is still like a child. It's like, I have to be able to convey that. And so much of it is just being able to just talk like I'm talking to you right now. It's like, you either sound like you know what you're doing or you don't. And it's so much of it, a lot of that for me to get through that in the beginning was just to talk about it. Like, I don't need it though.
Yeah.
It's like this is how I think it should probably be done. That's how I would do it. But it's not like
that's
it's
super
like
interesting.
you should hire me because I've shot the techno crane and I've shot the celebrities. It's not about me. It's about them. It's like, well, this is what I think you would need based on that. And it's like you can hire. Like I don't say it like this, but it's like so that's how I would do it. You could hire me or not. But it makes it feel like a little bit less personal. I try to like make it not about me. It's like this is about you guys. This is what you need, and it's different from I think director pitching because they really are looking at you and your vision. But I think it's a similar way. There's a slight detachment from it where it's like you don't you don't want to present it like you need them. I think I saw like a similar thing in how you were talking about
Yeah,
presenting.
totally. I think it's kind of like the same general idea. It's just like you said, the only difference is it's, this is my voice and this is the thing that I'm going to make. I don't need you to make it, but hey, we can make it together. So yeah, it seems like the same sort of general concept. But man, that's super interesting. I never thought about any of that before.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't even get onto it on this one because like, the DPs that make it to that point, like you either made it or you didn't, because I've fucked up those meetings so many times. Like,
Right.
oh my God. Like
I've had some nightmare meetings.
oh my God. It's like back when I was interviewing for like internships, like I was in like just graduated high school. Or no, I was like I was either in college or something. I was like, I went to New York City and I was like, I did like 20 interviews for internships in these big production companies, and I was an idiot. I didn't know anything. I didn't like dress right. I didn't even know who I was talking to, and I just remember bombing all of those. And I've done the same thing with these commercial pitches where like directors like, so like talk to me about the lighting. I just had no idea what to say, and I fucked those up so many times.
Totally. The worst is when you get the meetings where the people are stoked to make you feel small. And it's like, why? Why are you doing this? This is okay. Don't want me. Know that I'm not good for the thing. But why? Like it hasn't happened in years. But earlier on, I had a couple of meetings when I was first starting out, where yeah, sure, I was completely inexperienced, and I needed tons more time under my belt. But it's just like I don't understand the whole like make the person you're interviewing that will potentially make you money feel tiny. I don't get it.
Are they like testing you? Like I know with like because there's a my second phase of this company is moving into tech startup world. I have a couple companies I want to do, and I've been reading a lot about tech pitches and talking to other people who've done startups, and a lot of things they say about those type of meetings where it's like, so you're going to give me $5 million, and I'm going to tell you why. A lot of it, it's like they're like these weird like power battles where they're testing you. They're like, well, they'll show up late, and they're like, cool.
Yeah.
Like they're like, you've got 5 minutes. Like I kind of got to go, but you still have to. It's like a power play for them to see if like you really. If you can control the meeting. Is it that, or are they really just shitting on you for no reason?
I don't know. I mean, there definitely could be an element of that, but there's been a couple where it was definitely just because it's not people. The funniest thing is I don't know a nicer way to put it, but the most like nobody-ish type people that I've done meetings with were the ones that were the biggest douchebags. That's like, this is a tiny company. You don't do anything impressive or all that talented. And you're the biggest douche. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, like people that I've just met or talked to or maybe kicked ideas around with where it's like, why are you even talking to me? You're you. You know what I mean? It's like the nicest people that make you feel comfortable and are like, they get that, coming from a creative space, you have to build an environment where I feel safe enough to pour my heart out creatively, right? So it's like, they I think they understand that and they create that atmosphere to try to make you comfortable. And it's like, all right, now let me know what your vision is from there, for lack of a better word, the vision word, your ideas to have that, because if it's like you're going to make me feel like a total idiot and you hate everything about me, it's pretty good chance that I'm not going to do well creatively. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it definitely, I've seen a range with like management styles where it's like, I feel like we all know or we've met like people who are like a lot of the times in the public eye, and like when you actually talk to them, it's like, whoa, like I feel motivated now. Like I want to go do things. Those people,
Totally.
Like those are the ones that become natural leaders. And when you talk to, good directors, in my opinion, and good DPs as well, it's like, well, I don't even know what we just talked about, but like I'm like already moving. I'm already setting up the light. I'm already doing this. It makes you want to do that. And there's the opposite management style where it's a little bit more fear based, and I think that's kind of going away. But I've definitely worked for very successful directors who work under that like they're like, you've got 5 minutes. Why are you making me wait? Like I'm waiting. Like I've had the directors like yelling at me and stuff like that. And like these are successful people. Like I can't knock them. I'm like, well, you're the guy. You got this job, but like you're making me feel like really crazy. But I've seen the spectrum, so I mean I do kind of agree that like I think these days more and more with a little bit more transparency in the creative process, it's like, yeah, it's the ones that make you feel like creative and you want to work that are successful. And it's the people that if you have that other type of attitude, it's like you're going to kind of cap out at a certain level. Like you're just not going to be executing at a big enough level because your team isn't going to be enabled because you're kind of like stunting them.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I at least for me, because I mean, like I said, my no asshole rule, like I just don't work with people like that. It's just not, it's like, I love filmmaking. I love storytelling. And that ruins it. You know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
get to do this and you're ruining this. And then what a terrible life. Like if that's what you're doing all the time, like that's just miserable. And I've been on sets where it's just miserable and people are just treating you not very good. And you're just like, I don't want to be here. And you're not at your most creative. And you're just like, can't wait till this day is over. And then I've been at the opposite where it's like you feel a part of it and it's a family and you don't want to let the director down. And even that's how, I operate. It's like I create recently I was on a gig where I did some additional stuff and I was sent off into a corner to do something with this like tiny little crew and we had zero resources, but what we were asked to pull off was something that was like, how exactly are we going to do this? And so I gathered them around and none of them really wanted to be there with me doing this thing. And so I immediately started getting everybody involved. Well, what do you think? Hey, check out the monitor. And, that's not normal. So they're like, oh, no, we weren't looking over your shoulder. We're just, what it just tells what you need. I'm like, no, I need your input. And I turned it into like this group that was making something together, not just a bunch of people that were moving things for me. And next thing I know, everybody has ideas. Everybody's like going above and beyond and doing anything that I asked them to do. And it became like this thing where they would do basically anything for me because it became like this team instead of, what it could have been in the opposite of just barking orders and being aggressive. So that's always been sort of my approach that has worked way better for me. And it's just a better environment and it works, better for me in the end because it opens up this sort of landscape where the boom operator can be like, hey, I just noticed this. And I'm like, oh, you're right. Can we shift the frame this way? You know what I mean? Like people that on normal sets, it's like, hey, keep your mouth shut. On mine, it's like, hey, if you have an idea, feel free. I mean, I remember one time with one of my short films, my at the time 13-year-old little sister was just hanging out. And then she comes up to me and whispers in my ear, hey, did you notice this when the actress does that? And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. And I actually went and gave the actress the note and it's in the final short film. So it's like, I love creating that atmosphere to where it's like everybody feels safe and comfortable enough to, if you have an idea, let fly. And it's a better end production and, it makes everyone look better in the end.
I like it. I just came up with the title to this podcast. I'm going to call it The Secret of Film Riot, something like that. I think that's your secret. It's that like, and it's not a secret because I think you probably say it all the time on your channel is to, creating that atmosphere and the team that can do that with you. Because times get hard, things go wrong on the set, like you've said, and filmmaking is laborious and long hours and crazy. That with that environment on set and those people, that you guys can survive that and still be creative and still have it happen. And that's how you've attracted like great people around you, like Ryan Booth and Kramer and your whole team. I mean, that seems like, one of the main things that you championed for, and I think the results of it pretty much show itself. I was going to ask you a bunch of questions about social media, but I feel like at this point it feels well below the level that this conversation's got to. So I think one of my last questions I wanted to ask you is because like I think you're primarily in the director role, though you clearly come from a production background and you know a lot about everybody else's role, which is a good thing for a director. But what would you say makes a good cinematographer? Yeah, you mentioned a couple things already with your relationship with Ryan Booth, about he's not afraid to like creatively give input, which it sounds like you're welcome to. Not every director is, but you are. But like, what is it that you're looking for in a cinematography these days?
For me, this on set, the cinematographer is like, that's the marriage. That's like the most important role. Like that's the one person that I want by my side talking to me from, throughout the entire day, like above everyone else. That's the position that's like, because I'm a very visual filmmaker. Like I everything is very like, this is how I see it. And obviously sound, and I talk about it all the time, I think in the end is more important than what it even looks like. Because if it doesn't look super great, but it sounds great and it's a really well told story, you're going to forget about that. If it sounds bad, you're never going to forget about that. It's just how we work for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. So sound is definitely a huge one for me too. But that's something that I'm thinking about as far as post. And when I write, I'm even writing with sound in mind and visuals in mind. But on set, like that relationship is the most important to me. And for me, it's pretty simplistic. It's just somebody who can have a shorthand with me, can get inside my head and understand what it is that I'm trying to accomplish, that understands my style and my voice, as they say, and I can kind of get a handle on theirs, but doesn't exactly have mine, to where they can, totally respect and dig what I'm going for, but have a sort of different way of doing things and seeing things than me, but be willing to shed that when I say, well, no, because here's why, but always also be willing to challenge me, but not in aggressive ways. Like, that's what's so great about Ryan, the booth, is he'll come in with, he'll even come right up to me. Hey, why are we doing this? Why are you doing this like that? Why does the camera have to be here? And, he'll challenge my, hey, we're going to spend, the next hour setting this up. And he'll be like, why? Can't I just handheld it? And I'm like, well, no, we can't, because here's why. This is what the scene is. This is what the audience needs to feel. This is what the shot means. He doesn't let me just do things. I can't just be like, here's where the camera goes. Okay, go. He's like, well, why does it go there? And I love that, because I do think that way already, whereas not arbitrarily throwing a camera somewhere. There's a reason why the camera's there. There's a reason why that lens is on the camera. And because I am that specific, the way the camera's going here on this lens at this height, just like this, Ryan's always there to challenge that. And I think he's always sort of looking for cracks in the walls of like, are you super confident in this? Because there might be a better way to do it. And there were a few times in Ghost House where it's like, okay, here's what we're doing and here's why. And he's like, okay, I get what you want to do, but I think if we did it this way, it would be better. And then I'm like, well, show me. Okay, yeah, you're right. So it's a great relationship that we have, to where it's like, when I'm like, well, no, we have to do it this way for the story. This is why. He's like, all right, fair enough. Let's do it. And he trusts me. And then when he's like, Ryan, I don't think this is going to be what you want it to be, and he's really passionate about what he's telling me, I trust him. And I'm like, all right, let's do it your way then. So I think just having that like open relationship where you're both comfortable enough and honest enough to be able to do that, to where there's no like aggression to any of it. There's no like feelings hurt. You're able to just be like, I don't think that's going to work. And then be like, all right, fair enough. Let's do it. And me be able to just say like, hey, Ryan, that move, that was sloppy. We need to tighten it up. Oh, okay, no worries. Let's do it again. It's just that, the simplicity of that. Like, everything else is obvious. Of course you should know how to light. Of course you should know, good framing. These are things that are the obvious points. It's that relationship, I think, that's really the key for me. Because obviously if I want to work with you, it's because I love the way your stuff looks. So you know how to do that. That's, the given. But it has to be, a good marriage, a good creative marriage.
That's really cool. And I think that's really valuable for people. And, the way I've learned that the hard way and found things that worked and didn't. And I think that there's a lot of value to, and this is why film festivals are sometimes really good. And just meetups with filmmakers is that like the reason that like a lot of networking for filmmaking happens at like bars and parties and these things that as an introvert, I hate those things. But
totally.
As I learned to deal with them, it's like that's when you can kind of like see people like for real a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can start to judge. Like I've been at those parties where it's like obviously a networking party, like my agency would throw them, and it's like, oh, there's all these directors and there's all these DPs and they're all talking to each other, and it's like, but really you have to take the opportunity in those situations to just find out like, well, who has common interest with you? Like, you guys talk about Game of Thrones, are we talking about skateboarding here? Are you guys talking about something I don't know? It's like those things, they start to matter a lot more, especially on like a longer term relationship. Like I can work with any director. The director could be 5 and not speak English, and I can still execute a commercial for them. But as you're looking at like longer term relationships with directors, which is like kind of the bread and butter of any director and DP, is to kind of find that there's 1 or 2 people that you kind of work with like for a while. Totally. You end up working like big blocks of time with these teams. I've had that in my career. I think a lot of people do. So much of it is having that communication relationship and nurturing it and growing it. It's the same as having, I think, like a relationship with your significant other. It's a very similar thing that has to be fed, and like it'd be weird. Like if I hadn't worked with a director for a year and then we like all of a sudden are on a job again, it's like a different vibe already. Because if you don't keep up the relationship, things change.
Yeah, you have to have trust. Like he has to trust me and I have to trust him. If we don't, he's just going to be working against me because he thinks I'm wrong, and I'm going to be working against him because I think he's wrong, and it's just not going to turn out in the end. So it's like, I have to be willing to loosen the reins on this movie that's been playing in my head all through pre-production and be like, I brought him in because he's going to make this better, and be open to, the stuff that he's saying. And then he has to trust me enough to, when I say, no, we have to do it this way, that, okay, Ryan has a reason, it's going to turn out. And definitely, having your work out there for people to see is a big help in being like, okay, I've seen the stuff that they have a proven track record, they deliver. That definitely helps. But yeah, finding a way to, build all of what we just said on top of, the foundation of trust, which is starting to sound like a relationship podcast.
It is, though.
When you meet that beautiful woman. So it's like, it really needs that first. You need to be able to trust each other first, and then everything else can build on top of that.
Well, that's great, man. I like all the things we've touched on, and like you were, jokingly saying it's a relationship podcast that's been going that way. I tell DPs coming up, once they've done it for a little while, not in the beginning, it's just a shit show. It's everything's everywhere. But like once you like get in it a little bit, I tell them, like, and from my experience, it's like when you meet a director that you like, and when you guys work together, it turns out good. I was like, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Like you want to look at that like you found like your significant, like that is your significant other. It's your financial significant other. Like you both need to recognize that. And I think as a young person, people don't value that as much, but like that's really the game. That's really long-term career, not the beginning, like long-term, like that's what you're looking for. It's this constant search for someone that like you can make good looking work together and survive production through, because it can be brutal. So I'm glad that we got to this part. And to start to wrap it up, I want to just say, like, thank you for doing Film Riot. I think that you definitely pioneered, and there's things I probably don't even know because I wasn't in the beginning of YouTube, but pioneering education on YouTube, and making the brands aware of it and that sort of thing. Because as I was starting this company, Cinematography Database, I looked to you, Andrew Kramer with his software company. I think I'm a very similar model as well. And, both just kind of following what you guys have kind of already done has made things, I think, much easier for me.
That's
so
amazing.
I wanted to thank you for doing that.
That's awesome, man.
Well, cool. I have one last question here. It's okay if you say no.
No.
But it's a three-parter. Are you going to Masters in Motion in December? It's in Texas. If you are, would you be in my vlog, and can I use you as clickbait for that? It's okay if those are all no, but I wanted to ask that.
I don't think I am, unfortunately. I which is funny because I've gone almost every year. That could change, but right now the schedule is not permitting. But if I did go, the other two would be yes.
Okay, well, I'm still gonna use you for clickbait on it. I'm still gonna just put your face right on the cover.
Fair enough. I'll just do a printout of my face or something and just carry it around.
Well, that's perfect. So people are like, hey, you clickbait. I'm like, hey, he said I could do it. This is day one at Masters in Motion
listen to
vlog.
this podcast. He said it was fine.
Well, awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're coming off of the back of a really cool project. Hopefully you can talk about eventually. And of course, the production with Film Riot, a ton of work. So I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It was fun.
So that wraps it up for this episode. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Ryan. I think it's really cool to hear about the things that he's doing outside of Film Riot, because I think a lot of people give him crap about, only doing the YouTube channel. And they're like, are you doing features? Are you doing short films? Are you doing things outside of it? The answer is yes. But like we talked about, and as well for me, when I'm doing client work and things for other brands where we don't own the content, we also are not free and at liberty to talk about those things. So I wanted to just kind of put that out there. I got your back, Ryan. I 100% got your back. And thank you so much for being our first YouTube podcast episode. And congratulations again to you and the entire Film Riot team for hitting 1 million subscribers. You really are the blueprint and the pioneer in many, many ways for what I'm going to be doing and taking my platform to in this next couple years here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Next week, we're going to be talking with Jacob Owens of The Buff Nerds, another filmmaking YouTube channel. I think he's up to around 600,000 subscribers. Big deal. Really enjoyed speaking with him. He's got a guide coming out that we're going to be talking about. So if you want to get ahead, you want to do your homework for the next podcast, go check out The Buff Nerds on YouTube and get ready for next week's podcast. I will see you guys on the next episode. You get out there and plan better, shoot better.